Susie Orman said you need at least $5 million dollars to retire safely. But the typical retiree in this country is nowhere near that number, and most of them are going to be just fine. I've seen it firsthand. I've helped people retire on less than $300,000 who are genuinely comfortable and never think twice about what they spend. And I've sat across from people with $3 million or more who feel like they're never going to be able to retire. So, if you've been chasing one of those headline numbers, this video will be extremely valuable to you because how much you need to retire typically comes down to just two things, and they both belong to you and nobody else. The first is your guaranteed income, the money that shows up every month, no matter what, from Social Security, a pension, or anything you basically don't have to generate yourself. The second is what it costs to be you, your real annual spending amount adjusted for inflation. Once you have those numbers, everything else just works backward to find out how much you need to retire. Because the only job your savings really has to cover is the gap between what you spend and what's already coming in. So, in this video, I'll show you where those so called magic numbers come from and why they don't describe you. And I'll show you how to find your own two numbers, how to reverse engineer your lifestyle to determine the amount that you need and then one move that can potentially shrink the amount you need to save by six figures or more. Let's start with those magic numbers. A recent Northwestern Mutual survey found that Americans think they need about $1.5 million to retire comfortably, up from 1.25 million just the year before. And if you've already got $1 million saved, the figure people named climbed to more than 2.5 million. But that's what people think they need. And what you think you need and what you actually need can be worlds apart. Because look at what people are really retiring on. The typical household in their late 60s and early 70s has saved about $200,000. And those people are retiring anyway, every single day. So if the real requirement were anywhere near 1.5 million, almost nobody could ever retire, and yet they do. What's wrong is that the national number describes a crowd, and you're not a crowd. One person could own their home and live somewhere with low taxes, and another person could have years left on their mortgage and is still paying for their own health insurance. Those two people need very different amounts to retire. That's exactly why a number like 5 million is so far off for most people because it comes down to assumptions. Orman's math basically assumes you fund your entire retirement out of your savings, as if that money has to cover every dollar that you spend. But that's not how retirement works, because a good portion of your spending gets covered by guaranteed sources of income. The average household 65 years or older spends about $65,000 per year, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And the average retired couple collects more than $48,000 per year in combined Social Security. So a couple spending $65,000 with 48,000 of it already guaranteed, they only need their savings to produce about $17,000 per year. And if you run that through a conservative 4% withdrawal rate, it works out to somewhere around $425,000, not 5 million. Even a couple spending $80,000 per year with that same social security needs a portfolio of about 800,000. Orman's 5 million only makes sense in a few specific cases, such as retiring years before Social Security starts, or planning for a long stretch of expensive care, or genuinely funding a luxury lifestyle. Now, obviously, this is a simplified example. It does account for growth, which is the piece most of these magic numbers ignore. You're not stuffing 30 years of spending into your accounts on day one. That money stays invested and it keeps working. So a few $100,000 left to grow while you take 1 year's slice at a time can throw off that income for decades instead of running dry. What this example doesn't fully capture is a couple curveballs, like one spouse passing away and the household losing a social security check or a healthcare event. And both of those are real concerns and they can push the real number up. That's exactly why actual planning matters. And it's also where a bigger number starts to make sense. But for the typical retiree, you're funding a gap of your income, not every penny of it, which is why we don't borrow a number. We build one, and we start with guaranteed income. This, again, is going to be Social Security or a pension if you're fortunate to have one. Claiming Social Security the day you turn 62 locks in a smaller check for the rest of your life, while waiting into your late 60s can grow that check substantially. That's income your portfolio either has to replace or it doesn't. And replacing even $1,000 per month of income for the rest of your life can take several $100,000 of savings. So, one of the fastest ways to shrink the number you need has nothing to do with saving more. It's arranging when your guaranteed income switches on. The second number is what it costs to be you, rather than what some generic budget says a retiree should spend, but what it truly costs to fund your lifestyle. And that number doesn't just rise with some single inflation rate. Different parts of your life inflate at completely different speeds. If your mortgage is fixed, it doesn't inflate at all, and one day it will drop off entirely. Healthcare, on the other hand, tends to climb faster than almost anything, often 5 or 6% per year. So, your real cost of being you isn't one figure growing in a straight line. It's a mix of pieces moving at their own pace, and getting that mix right is a big part of landing on a number that you can trust. And the interesting thing is, most people spend less than they expect once they get to retirement. In that Northwestern Mutual survey, about 55% of people plan to spend less in retirement than they did while they were working, and only about 1 in 10 plan to spend more. That being said, what you spend and what you have to withdraw are not the same thing. Say your lifestyle costs $120,000 per year. You can't just pull 120,000 out of a traditional 401k or an IRA, because a chunk of every withdrawal will go to taxes before it ever reaches you. So to keep 120 in your pocket, you might have to withdraw closer to, say, 130,000. That gap between what you spend and what you pull out is called grossing up. And it's the reason the real number can land higher than people expect. So when we talk about what it costs to be you, we mean the amount you have to take out, not just the amount that you get to enjoy. Which brings me to what I mentioned at the start of the video, the move that could potentially lower your number by 6 figures. It isn't just how much you've saved, it's also what kind of accounts that money is sitting in. So picture two people, both retiring at age 65, both needing that same gap covered. Well, the first person has everything in a traditional 401k, so every dollar they owe taxes on when it comes out. The second person has the same amount saved, but they have it split across a pre tax account, a Roth, and a regular brokerage account. The second person needs a smaller amount of money to fund an identical lifestyle, because they can pull some money from the Roth completely tax free. They can take gains from the brokerage account at a lower capital gains rate, and they can cover the rest of their spending needs from the pre tax account. The first person has none of those luxuries, so more of every withdrawal goes to taxes, which means they have to withdraw more, so they needed more saved just to land in the same place. Over a full retirement, that difference can easily run into 6 figures. So the second person didn't earn a better return, and they didn't save an extra dollar. They just built the plan so the same life will cost less to fund. And that comes down to where your money sits in the year before you retire, which is a decision you can still shape today. But the truth is, comparison really is the thief of joy. And nowhere is that more accurate than when we talk about retirement, where really great people measure their lives against a magic number that never even applied to them. Your number very well might be 5 million, but it also might be 300,000. Your number is built from those two things that belong only to you. What's your guaranteed amount of income that is coming in? And what does it cost to be you? And then it moves based on choices that are still in your hands, such as when you retire and where your money is allocated. And if you would ever like a hand applying any of this to your own situation, you'll find a link right below in the description. Whenever you're ready, to schedule time to speak with us at no cost to get your retirement questions answered. And just remember, the difference between worrying about retirement and enjoying it usually isn't about having more money. It's about taking the time to inspect what you already have and building a plan around it. As always, I appreciate you spending part of your day with me, and I'll see you in the next video.